Okay, so now I'm going to share my screen and I am going to, yep, perfect. Okay, so 5 key ways, and I have 3 5s to go through with you, and 10 minutes each. So there's a couple of numbers before we start at all. Okay, so in terms of preparation minimization, first of all, Edco learning. Definitely that is the first port of call that we would direct you to. Like I say, the schemes of work are there, the slides are there, the solutions to the questions are there. No, sorry, when I say they're there, they're being added along the way, so that as people are going to be availing of the book in the coming months and years, they certainly will be in there. And there is a lot of cumulative effort that has gone in there. And Stephen put a lot of the resources together from a teaching point of view. And therefore, there really is a lot of opportunity there to just lever like he said there, the 10 years of correcting all of the classes that he's been in and led and so on. So that's certainly the first port of call. The second one is the Economics in Our World documentaries. Now, what are these? Well, let me just give you the background to these. So Edco said to us that they wanted a video for each chapter. And we could, of course, spend loads of times creating a voiceover. But instead, I thought, well, let's do this in a way that is much more accessible and engaging to teenagers in the way in which they consume their content today. So in the case, as you know, teenagers are spending their time on Instagram and on TikTok and on other social medias like that. So as a result, that's the way in which I really thought about this, is that how could we bring economics to life by doing something like an economics documentary in that form. So I'm just going to give you, just going to show you here the examples of them. So there's one that I just published there last Monday, which is around the circular flow of income. That one is focusing on how the circular flow of income flows through the town of Claremorris in Mayo. This one here, it's focusing on the marginal efficiency of capital. That's by looking at a company in Monaghan. This one over here, how businesses set prices. This goes through the various different ways, whether it's cost plus or whether it is by market research, etc. That's a walk through Stoneybatter. Then we have the other one down here, the 4 market structures. This particular one is recorded where I took the 4 different market structures through different one was the English market in Cork. The 4 of them were in Cork that particular time. I was home for Christmas. So one is in the English market, one is in a cafe monopolistic competition. Then I also showed 2 examples of oligopoly and then also monopoly as well. So you can see that one over there. And this was actually the first one. Now I actually only came up with this thought process just round about just at the beginning of December, started creating the first one. And this one is focusing on social enterprises. So every week, around about every week-ish, I release a new one. It'll be up on Edco Learning. It'll also be up here, as you can see. It'll be up on my Instagram. It's up on TikTok, etc. But I do want to tell you about one that I'm working on that I will have out soon. And I just think this is important to tell you directly. And that is in chapter 1, the video that we're going to put into chapter 1 is why study economics at all? Like, why? Why would one choose to go on and study economics? Now, super quick background on me. I didn't do economics in school. I went to school in Coach for College, and then after that I went on to study financial maths and economics in what's now University of Galway with a view to becoming an actuary. So I only started my study of economics in college and was fascinated by it. And then from there, so much more then went on to happen thereafter. So as a result, I have always just seen how economics is in the world through the lens of practice and theory, because of the way in which I learned it along the way. And so as a result, that's why I think it's really important to actually showcase to students why you would study economics. And not just looking at leaving cert, but looking at well beyond that as well. So that's one that's coming. Should you need to, share something with people who are thinking about studying the subject and not really sure, people in transition year, people in third year who are going to skip transition year, hopefully then that can be useful for you as well. So there, by the way, sorry, another thing I need to mention is the longest video is 3 minutes. The longest one was how to set prices. That was slightly over 3 minutes. This one is 3 minutes and 2 seconds. And the shortest one is just under 2. So those economic documentaries are short. Like I said, they're TikTok, they're Instagram length. That's where those are. Okay, but they'll all be up on Edco Learning. Now, I know we've already referred to it, but the Economics Project Diary, just to, both Steve and I talked to obviously a lot of teachers in our time. And I spend a lot of time, disproportionately a lot of time with teenagers. So I work with tens of thousands of teenagers every year through the lens of work experiences that we run in various different initiatives, and some of which I'm going to highlight to you as we go along. And when it comes to the economics project, a lot of the time I hear things like, well, I wanted to pick this particular, line of inquiry because there's a lot of data. But the problem is that there can be a lot of data. Whereas instead, as Stephen says, there's only X amount of it that they need. And what's more important is how they analyze it. And what's even more important again is how they reflect upon it. So what I would really hope is useful for you is that chapter 19, where you can see how it charts the course of that student, day 1, day 2, day 3, all the way up to actually getting it to the end of where they submit it. It's also broken down by section, where she starts off with the introduction and she thinks about this, but also she cuts things out as she goes. That's important too, is that not everything that you have is going to fit. And it's not about simply reaching the word count. It's about making sure that you're actually achieving the things that you think that are achieving the objectives that are actually set out by there. So hopefully, we really do hope that your preparation can be minimized by that economics diary as well. I'm just going to skip to number 5 before I go back to number 4, and that is because Stephen has already mentioned them, is the CSO infographics. They're just brilliant. We use a lot of them in the book, but again, the challenge with using them, of course, is that we know is that they're going to change all the time. The one Stephen mentioned there, it's the latest publication, or it's the latest one that's out there in the labour market and earnings. They're in Irish and in English, so for any of you who are in a Gael school, of course, they also fulfill that purpose. But they're really, really, really very, very well done. And if you need to find them, they're on the CSO homepage, and specifically, as you can see here, they're people, society, census, environment, economy, etc. They're all in there. Now, one of my own favorites is Where Your Money Goes, and this is the other, it's the number 4 here that I mentioned, Where Your Money Goes. I use this website all the time as a practicing economist, but also with teenagers, to do exactly as the name suggests, to talk about where your money goes. And of course, this refers very much to any of both chapters that refer to government spending, but so much more as well. Like when you look at everything to do with national income, how taxes are spent. In fact, even the role of taxes themselves in encouraging certain things to happen, whether it is people to move from part-time work into full-time work, whether it might be, of course, any of the taxes that are put in place to disincentivize behavior. Whether it is of course, corporation tax, lowering corporation tax to encourage more companies to come into Ireland, and then that feeds into the chapters on globalization. When it looks at how much of our taxes that come in are then subsequently spent on aid, then of course that goes to the least developed countries, etc. So I find this website is really, really good, and it's intriguing, particularly when you say, for example, how much is taken or how much is spent on child benefit. And because I often bring this up with teenagers, because I'd say, like, this is how much money is spent or given. We'll say not given, obviously. There's an awful lot you have to do to get it, namely give birth. But when you actually look at the equivalent, when you take the amount that's spent on child benefit and then you equate that to other areas of the system, whether it might be pensions, whether it might be spending on health, when they can actually see the numbers that come in, I think it can spark an awful lot of interesting discussion. So Where Your Money Goes is the website. You can see here, like when I click here on social protection, then it will drill down into social protection. And for example, here I've got my working age income supports, I've got illness, disability and carers. And here's the 2.99 billion spent on children, and specifically the 2.2 billion spent on child benefit. Now, if I was to go and have a look at what else takes up that portion of spending in the economy, and then ask them, well, what do they think of that decision that the government has made? Now they're invested. And also, for example, here in the case of education, generally they think that that's all spent on them, whereas of course it's not, because there's lifelong education as well. When they can see how much is spent on primary teacher salaries versus secondary teacher salaries, and all of what goes with it along the way. When it comes to, for example, spending on textbooks, a lot of them tend to agree with that now. And you say, okay, but what happens when you go to college and there isn't funding for your textbooks, for example? But on the other hand, if you talk about how much is spent on supporting you going to college versus how much it costs for a student to go to college in America, how many students actually incur debt in the UK when they're going to college, and all of the other various different discussion points that can happen from there. So it's there. It's live, it's constantly brought up to date, it's clickable, it's visual. I find that it can be a very, very useful resource, and it just touches so many elements of the course. So what I had wanted to do there is in those couple of minutes is just to highlight where hopefully you can minimize the preparation. Edco learning is one, the economics in our world documentaries to introduce the topic, and the economics project diary all around the project itself. Where your money goes is an area that touches on so many different elements of the course. And then finally, the CSO infographics as well.